This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you click on the link in the description below, it'll take you to their store and they'll know I sent you there. Hi everyone, I'm Neat Sahone, and it's Friday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10. Most of the time, this series involves me using historical tournament data to rank cards in a particular category, but sometimes I like to do lists that are entirely subjective, and that's what this one is. In this video, I'm going to give you my 10 most favorite silver-bordered cards. Silver borders appear on cards that are not intended for typical tournament play. For the most part, we only see silver borders on cards in unsets and other types of promotional cards. You know, like the Walking Dead Secret Lair cards should have, but don't. Silver bordered cards are often wacky cards that make meta jokes, so they are pretty funny. Alright, let's get to my list. At number 10, I have Urza, Academy Headmaster. People begged for an Urza card for a long time, but Wizards didn't really deliver, and no, Blind Seer doesn't really count. So, they decided to troll the community by printing this in Unstable. If you look closely, it is literally Urza's head, and just his head. But in addition to that, they also made this Planeswalker really, really wacky. You literally have to go to AskUrza.com and click on what you're doing with Urza loyalty-wise, and he then does some random ability from all the Planeswalkers in existence. You can see why this is something that needs to have a silver border. These days, we've actually been given a legit Urza card in the form of Urza Lord High Artificer, but as of now, this is still the only Urza Planeswalker card we have. At number 9, I have Ultimate Wizards of the Coast Customer Service Nightmare. This card is a really fun joke, and also kind of a relic of the past. Unglued was Magic's first silver-bordered set released back in 1998. The joke here is that this card is super complicated with the X, Y, and Z values. Thus, players will have to call customer service to help them understand how it works. The card even has a blue frame but a red casting cost, which will certainly result in some additional questions about what color the card is, too. I think the joke here is sort of saying that R&D intentionally designs cards to be complicated to troll the customer service line, even putting the number on the card as flavor text. And all these years later, I still think this joke works pretty well. Obviously, these days no one would ever think of calling Wizards customer service for help with a complicated card, but the joke still works. At number 8, it is Old Fogey. This is another card that is kind of funny to look at in 2020, a full 22 years since this card itself was printed, but I think the concept of this card still works. The joke is that it has a bunch of old mechanics, and they definitely chose those that are not considered to be very good. Phasing, cumulative upkeep, echo, and fading are all mechanics that give you significant downsides, and putting them all together on a single card, even if it is a 2-mana 7/7, is enough to still make this card pretty bad. Then the remainder of mechanics are all upside, but super specific, like banding with dinosaurs, protection from hominids, which are one of the worst creature types ever, and snow-covered planeswalk. Basically, none of those will ever come up. Finally, it has flanking and rampage, mechanics that come up a little more often, but are certainly not considered to be good mechanics. At number 7, it is Very Cryptic Command. Obviously, this is a riff on Cryptic Command, a modal card with a big block of text that was once printed as a textless card despite being kind of complicated. Very Cryptic Command, as an individual card, isn't really that cryptic, but the fun thing they did here is they printed 6 different versions of the card in the same set, all of which have different options. Obviously, that makes it extra cryptic, because when your opponent is casting this card, there are a whole bunch of different permutations they could choose, depending on what version of Very Cryptic Command they have. They did multiple versions of cards with the same name with a few other cards in Unstable, but this is my favorite of the bunch. At number 6, it is Thopter Pi Network, which is a holiday-themed Thopter spy network. Wizards has put out a holiday-themed silver-bordered promo card every year since 2006, and this is my favorite one. The idea here is that you need to be eating the entire time this is in play in order to get that 1/1 Thopter token on your upkeep, and food has to represent the token, so I'm sure you can imagine some pretty strange-looking board states. Holidays are often about eating, so it seems like this will make a lot of 1/1s if you're playing with this card during the holidays. Side note, this card has become a little more confusing with the food tokens that debuted in Throne of Eldraine. You might have to call a judge over if your opponent tries to use food from that set to represent their token. At number 5, I have Strategy Smategy. Magic, while partially a game of skill and strategy, is also partially a game of chance. That's part of what makes the game so fun. It has lots of replay value thanks to variance. However, there are definitely times where it seems like variance is a little bit out of control and against you. There's no point in you formulating a strategy because things just aren't going your way. Strategy, schmatagy, is kind of an ode to Magic's variance, as it has a random effect based on a die roll, and depending which one you end up in, you can definitely end up hurting yourself more than you're hurting your opponent. It has a pretty fun visual gag riffing on Wheel of Fortune, too. People still complain about variance in Magic today, so even though this is a joke from 1998, it's still very applicable in our own time. At number 4, it is Chaos Confetti. This card is a reference to Chaos Orb. In the early days of Magic, they sometimes printed cards that required you to use manual dexterity. Chaos Orb, for example, has you flip the card over the table, and then it destroys any permanent it hits. That's a pretty good deal for 3 mana, provided you're good at flipping it. Chaos Confetti is kind of a self-deprecating joke on Wizards' part, pointing out the problems with Chaos Orb and other manual dexterity cards, but it is also a reference to a common story from Magic's early days. One that involved people tearing up their Chaos Orb and throwing it up in the air and destroying the entire board. This story seems like it was probably apocryphal, which Wizards notes with the flavor text, which states, "And you thought that was just an urban legend." It was definitely a well-known enough story back in 1998 that the joke on this card worked really well. At number 3, it is Look at Me, I'm the DCI. If you're unfamiliar with DCI, it stands for Duelists Convocation International, and up until earlier this year, it was the official sanctioning body for Magic tournaments. Among other things, the DCI determined what cards needed to be banned. Now, while the DCI doesn't exist anymore, I think the basis for the joke on this card expresses a self-deprecating sentiment about Wizards of the Coast that still makes sense today. Obviously, this card lets you ban whatever non-basic land card you want, and the art here depicts the DCI just playing with cards with a blindfold, with a dartboard covered with cards, and whatever card they hit, they're going to ban. Banning has always been a highly controversial thing. With just about any announcement, some people are mad that a card was banned, and others are mad that other cards weren't banned. And sometimes it does feel a little bit like Wizards doesn't actually know what they're doing when they ban and restrict cards, so the joke definitely holds up. The flavor text is the cherry on top of this meta joke. Also, fun side note, Mark Rosewater did the art for this card. At number 2, I have Circle of Protection art. First of all, this card has a ridiculous effect mimicking black bordered circles of protection by letting you prevent damage from something. In this case, cards with the art of an artist of your choice. You can also return it to your hand when you feel like you need to change your choice. The effect here isn't what I think is really fun about this card, it's the art. Both versions of it have some funny stuff going on in the artwork, but I prefer the original version. Kind of like Old Fogey has some intentionally bad mechanics, Circle of Protection art shows a person defending themselves from art from Magic's past, and it's all art that is considered by many people to be some of the worst art in Magic's history. It features the art of Stasis, Silhouette, Reverse Polarity, and Weakstone. And at number 1, I have Alexander Clamilton. This card is the right way to go about referencing other real-world works of fiction. Well, I guess historical fiction in this case, but it's still fiction. It doesn't straight up have Lin-Manuel Miranda on it, and hopefully we never end up there, but it does a good job of referencing the Tony Award-winning musical with the card's name and its effect. The whole wordy mechanic is perfect for both the real-world and musical versions of Alexander Hamilton, who was a very wordy guy who wrote a lot. He even pumps himself when you reveal wordy cards with his activated ability and then fights things. I'm a big fan of Hamilton, so this card was really exciting for me when they revealed it. The one thing they missed out on, though? Flavor text. I know, he's so wordy that he doesn't have room for flavor text, but who lives, who dies, who shells your story would have been a pretty great line of flavor text. So those are my favorite silver bordered Magic cards. What are your favorites? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. And if you want to catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you're looking for more MTG Top 10 content, I've got you covered. You should see a playlist with all 300 plus of my MTG Top 10s on your screen now. Thanks for watching.